The subcommittee hasn't been able to get together to discuss this either. So I don't know if they've
Well,
read my narrative.
everybody's read your narrative,
Okay.
I trust, and essentially my comments to you in that note I sent you back, some of the worksheets. And you know, it's I don't know if you want to, I mean, I might as well just summarize a couple of things, and then along the way, maybe people could ask you questions. Basically, the budget is you know, we asked for and got level dollar general expense, and we also asked for and got, you know, gee, don't add any overtime, but don't subtract any overtime, and you know, if you have to hire somebody, you know, let's hear about it and whatever. Your budget only went up 32 grand. Okay.
Combined.
Combined.
On water and sewer.
No. Water and sewer went up about $50,000,
Right.
some 53. So, but of the non-water and sewer, it only went up 32, and part of that is a change in your allocation method, because before, last year you did not allocate longevity. Okay, so that's the difference. Well, that amounts to about a $10,000 difference.
Right.
Okay, so I mean, it might have been more even. Your budget might have gone up 42, and water and sewer would have gone up 42. It would have been more equitable. But including that in your allocation, which I think is the right way to go, just meant that more of it went to water and sewer this year, your salaries. And anyway, it's a, you know, we're getting a bargain here. I mean, it's a $4 million budget that went up to 32,000, which is nothing. Now, there are a couple of reasons that made it easier for you to keep it level, and mainly that's because of your solid waste contracts.
Right.
And you know, we went to pains this year to try and protect everybody's contracts from, you know, the general attempts or, you know, practice of asking people for a level dollar budget and then watching them squirm as they have to pay for their general, you know, outside contracts.
Which are typically going to escalate.
And so we wanted to protect people's contracts. Now, flip side of the coin, generally, when a contract goes down, although we haven't run into any of those until tonight, when a contract goes down, you'd like to think, okay, well, now the town gets the benefit of that, and it comes back to the general fund. And you wouldn't, and a department that had a contract go down wouldn't just say, oh, look, I can put that money to something else now. This is a different circumstance, though, because I spoke earlier about the need for this meeting the EPA mandates for the storm water management, and that that was probably going to drive, you know, a good chunk of an $800,000 chunk of a potential override, and that's, I'm sure we want to know more about that, but in this case, I mean, if without that, we'd be saying, gee, Joe, you know, great job, $150,000 savings on the solid waste. What do you think you're doing with it? But in this case, that savings largely went to fund the new division of, or the new budgetary division of the DPW, which is the stormwater management division.
And Ted, is it clear to your members why it is I decided to break stormwater out as a separate entity this year in where it was commingled into other parts in years past?
I don't know if it's clear. It's clear to me that you have to set up a track record for the EPA and begin to show what kind of deficit there is in well, show what efforts we are making there, and also to show what the deficit is that we will need to make up. So that's clear to me, but I don't know if anybody has any questions along those lines. Why don't you tell us about stormwater management?
Yeah, because it's a big, you've,
the EPA mandates.
many folks who've been on this committee for a long time, or at least as long as I've been here, have heard me mention NIPDES. Some people know it professionally, some people have just heard me mention it, but NIPDES is National Pollution Discharge Elimination System. It's an acronym. It's to an unfunded federal mandate. Massachusetts, through a comprehensive permit for the entire state, has been functioning under the first permit, which was a 5-year permit for the past 9 years. And it seems illogical, but they've extended it just ad nauseum for 4 years in a row, as EPA was beginning to hammer out the language on what's going to become the new permit. And we've been working on that, professionally, for 3 full years of all of us wringing our hands and wondering what's going to look like, and kind of massaging it and working with the federal folks. So what's come down now is the draft permit has now been issued. So now, for the first time, we don't have this esoteric thought of what it might look like. Now we know what it is that the federal government is asking cities and towns in our region, and I dare say across the nation, to be carrying out under this new permit. The good news is Milton's been pretty progressive over the years. There's a lot of things that we have been doing over the years that are included in what was in the old permit and are included in the new permit. There are many new things in the new permit that we haven't thought about financially and begun to carry out. But nor has anybody else. So with that in mind, we also applied for a Community Innovation Challenge grant. We partnered up with NEPRA, the the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission, and 9 other communities. And we partnered up to create a stormwater collaborative where we sat and looked at the new permit and what are those types of things that we could do collectively. Why reinvent the wheel? Why have Milton do a public relations campaign and Canton do a public relations campaign and Norwood do when we can do a public relations campaign and kind of partner up and do it more efficiently and cost effectively. So that was part of the Community Innovation Challenge grant. The other piece of that was that 2 communities were singled out. 2 communities offered themselves to be a pilot program, and they were singled out within the grant application. And Milton was a pilot program to look at the viability of how do you pay for, helping you guys, how do you pay for these things that the federal government is telling you to do? There are many tools in the box. There are simply build into your budget, get an override. There can be a for-fee service. There can be a per-lot assessment as a separate non-tax, as a fee, just like water and sewer charges. There can be a calculation based on impervious area, meaning how much roof and pavement do you have on your lot, and how much, therefore, do you contribute to stormwater runoff to give it some equity. So we participated in that pilot study to kind of analyze what our costs would be, carry out the permit, what's Milton's cost, and the various ways that you might consider paying for it. And that pilot is about 90% complete. We actually had a meeting yesterday morning, and I think I was wearing the same clothes I'm wearing now. And, in fact, I'm sure I am, with the exception of my socks, and too much detail. And the result of that is going to be what it is we roll out as a public forum to let the public know some of the tools that might be considered, and then hopefully use it as a springboard for a future revision to our stormwater bylaw, in creation of a stormwater utility, which is very common across the country, not so much so in New England. And then ultimately, how to, a calculation of assessment of fees, which would ultimately be enterprised, but like water and sewer. So culling that out of the budget and keeping it as a separate entity establishes that track record that you spoke of, Ted. More importantly, it also gives us credit for those things that we're already doing. We're already sweeping streets and maintaining a street sweeper and have people on the street sweeper. We clean catch basins. We inspect and TV our catch basins. We have a yard waste program, curbside yard waste program. It's what federal permit says you must have it. We have it. We have a household hazardous waste collection program. And so those types of things that we've been doing as part of general public works, solid waste, hazardous waste, we pull them out enter them as line items within our stormwater permit. So those things that we've already been doing, we want to take credit for. So what it boils down to is that $800,000 a year gap between what we think our annual cost was, about 1.2 million, and about that 400,000 that we are spending. It's a ramp up. The new permit is in public comment period now. It's been released for public comment. I'm biting my tongue because this should have been issued 4 years ago, 5 years ago, but now that it's up for public comment, we really believe it's gonna be implemented, not FY16, but likely our FY17. We're gonna be seeing real numbers hit. It might hit latter part of FY16, but I think, as long as we're showing good faith, and I think breaking the numbers out and showing them, when EPA comes in, I think we can hold our heads high. We got a consortium together, we're working as collaboratively, we're doing these things, I mean, we're surely showing good faith. But the truth is that we know what it is gonna cost for us to do all those new things under the permit. It's a mandate.
That's the $800,000.
That's correct. That's correct. That number, it's a planning number. It came out of that effort I just spoke of. It's 1.262, round numbers is what that first year impact would be. So call it 1.2 million. And, our initial pass was, it's like 327,000 that we're currently spending. We're spending closer to 350 in real numbers. What I did in this budget, and Ted mentioned it, but I'm not sure it was digested, is that the savings that I got out of solid waste by that reduction in contract, I took those savings and I applied them into stormwater as a way to increase our effort and better get closer to achieving the goal. So that's the methodology that I used. I seem to have some support, I have some support of that from the Board of Selectmen, they understand that. Many folks, within the collaborative completely support that. They think it's a great way to go. They aren't as fortunate as we are to have been able to turn our trash program on its head and go from a 5-day program to a 2-day program and save substantial money. I was able, in my mind, I felt it was a good investment. And to Ted's point is whether, I ought to have given that back to the general fund. I guess I would fight tooth and nail and disagree, but.
Well, all things being equal, you would want to give it back to the general fund. But in this particular situation, you can't. That's fine. The current stormwater budget, we do have it up to about 600,000.
That's correct. That's the 400 we have been spending plus an additional 200 I think we're throwing in through savings.
Right.
In round numbers.
I gotta tell you, I think the people that are doing the trash pickup are phenomenal. I can't believe the ability to pick up in this weather and how well they're doing.
Yeah.
Actually, like anything, there's good and bad with, and the change is always a little uncomfortable, but my eyes were open wide in this type of weather. Waste Management would have said, we're not coming.
Yeah.
Period. These guys are getting it done. They're not getting 100%, and our tonnage on bad weather is down about a half. But the people aren't complaining. They're getting it out, and so far, so good.
Amazing.
Well, they can't even fit the
Amazing.
truck down some of those streets.
Yeah.
It's just like, you're just gonna pick both sides at the same time.
Steve?
Joe, for the stormwater costs, the $1.2 million, that's gonna be operational, it's not gonna be capital costs.
That's not counting any capital. We have an ongoing annual capital request. Typically, over the past 6 years, we've typically asked for 500,000 and received 500,000 to carry out capital projects for stormwater. That was diminished to 300,000, recollection, 300,000 last year, and Capital Planning Committee this year's recommendation is going to be closer to 200,000 this year.
Will that cause you any additional maintenance expenses by not continuing at that higher level?
I mean, the answer is yes, but what we're doing is regaining some ground for decades of neglect. So what I said is we do catch basin cleaning, we do system evaluation. So, and we're gonna be doing outfall monitoring and sampling and testing. So it's gonna help us determine where we have illicit discharges. So we're gonna be able to determine whether we've got problem stretches of our system. And we can go in and when we do our TV work and confirm those areas, it then gives us that capital money to go in and address those. So, so the number that is in here is operation only and not the capital.
Joe? Stormwater, that is not part of the levy, is it? The funds that would support the stormwater projects?
It is.
Do you
Project-
envision, you said you envisioned a the creation of a stormwater utility.
Yes, I said that.
That would remove it from the levy? It would be like water and sewer?
That is correct.
But right now,
let me say it differently. It would be a stormwater utility, it would be a fee, but it could still be part of the levy. I guess it really determines where ultimately the selectmen go. So as that final pilot report gets publicized, as they come in and present to the Board of Selectmen, as the conversation gets vetted out at various committee levels, in town here, the town can ultimately decide how it wants to keep it. It can stay part of the levy, doesn't have to be enterprised, but breaking it out as a separate item allows us to track that investment towards meeting the obligation.
okay.
Now, if it is a pure fee, in essence, if we pull the $600,000 out, I think I'm giving you 600, in theory, we may be freeing up $600,000 of the levy to help you achieve your Prop 2.5.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is this going to, further restrict the levy limit to other operational funds, or is this going to be outside of the levy?
I think it's not gonna further restrict, I think it's going to open up the opportunity so let's say this becomes an entity, stormwater entity, it becomes enterprised. This budget amount, that 600,000, round numbers, theoretically, you take it right off the levy, put it into this enterprise that's supported by the fee, you're talking a couple years out, that's supported by the fee, theoretically, that $600,000 just came off your levy,
That's good.
right? It frees up that money.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's similar,
If you build the department within the general fund budget and then pull it out, then it would certainly free up that amount.
It would be different than what was done with solid waste, because, and I wasn't here when it was done, but I envisioned that at some point in time, when a sticker program was implemented in town, there must have been some discussion about, well, it used to be part of my tax base, I paid for it as part of my taxes, and now you're asking me to buy a sticker.
Right.
And I think a decision was made that, okay, the stickers would always generate about half of the revenue it costs to run the trash program, and the other half will be always part of your tax base. And it's still about 50% now.
Because there was a time when water and sewer was included in your tax bill.
Sure, way back, sure, right. I shouldn't say way back, because you were probably,
What, you mean as a service?
I apologize. Not that long ago, but you remember well.
So, Kevin, you mean that it was included as separate charges on your
Good
tax
save.
bill?
Not
Or just
separate, part of
included
your tax
as-
bill.
It was
Part of
just
the
free
levy.
water and free sewer?
Basically, and, yeah, it was, the amount was,
Right.
it was included in the tax rate, and then it was broken out as a separate utility.
Okay, so it wasn't targeted to the individual
But that was
user.
pre-Proposition 2.5 days.
Well, life was simpler.
It was also tax deductible as opposed to a fee
That's
that
right.
isn't. So
That's
it's a
right.
very,
So, Joe, go ahead, Phil.
Joe, the 1.3 million beginning next year, what's the inflation cost gonna be on that going forward? What's it gonna be in 3 years? What's it gonna be in 5 years?
We actually we had debated that in in our meeting yesterday morning, and we recognized that, some of the, I mean, there was going to be increase in costs. Some of it's going to be, personnel based, which is gonna be contract, easy enough to calculate. other things that we haven't even procured yet. We know the round of wet weather sampling and dry weather sampling at the outfalls, and then be able to trace them upstream and be able to, those are all costly tests that need to be done. You can rely somewhat on volunteers to gather the samples, but you still have lab and analytical work that costs money, that, we just don't know yet.
But we don't know if it's 5% or 2.5% or 10%.
That's correct, we don't know yet,
So it's-
and we haven't forecasted that yet. The debate, the discussion we had yesterday during our meeting was charging, MAPC, our planner, who's helping us with this report, was exactly that tone, as we ought to be looking at, what are the future year costs, and
Okay, so
we basically just added about another 40, 50 hours of work to her scope.
At 1.3 million, if you were to look at a fee-based situation instead of under the operating budget, it'd be about $150 for the 9,000 households on an average in town.
Our number was, our raw number was about 190.
Yeah. Okay. Then you've got the equity, people who own huge places and huge lots and small lots and that kind of thing, but, okay. Interesting.
Just, though we're working as a collaborative within a consortium, in that we're a pilot of two communities, I want to be clear that the MWRA hosted a statewide, not just MWRA stakeholders, but statewide workshop back in November, and I brought Anne Marie Fagan and Amy Dexter, the town accountant, with me to that workshop, where I knew it was going to be specifically tailored towards the whole discussion of what's been done nationally with stormwater utilities. And it was very, very informative. There were 230 communities represented at that forum. That's from Massachusetts.
Out of 320 total,
351,
51?
if you count Devon's 352.
And about 6 stormwater utilities in the whole state.
Lee Michael.
I have questions on a different topic, if that's okay, on refuse and recycling. I was wondering if you could explain to me how the contracts work and how the costs of recycling are driven, whether it costs us more if we recycle more or if it actually costs us less, and how the trash sticker program offsets or doesn't offset the cost of solid waste removal.
Sure. So, recycling is free to the consumer. They're not putting an additional sticker on. When I say free, it's clearly in their tax base.
Mm-hmm.
So we're covering it through the tax levy. The solid waste disposal, that sticker that you're buying is picking up about 50% of the cost of the solid waste program as a total, okay? There are waste ban regulations, so things like recyclables. If our trash was coming in very well mixed with recyclable products, they're waste ban items, and the roads could be rejected. So the thought is that, communities should generally comply with the waste ban. So it obligates towns to recycle. Not everybody does, and some people take, suffer the penalties and pay for it. So you're collecting with trucks. There's a pretty well fixed cost to collect it during the week. And when it's collected, you're transporting it and you're weighing it and disposing of it. Because of the commodity nature of recycling, when the paper market was very strong, we were making some good money, a couple $100,000 a year in revenue on the commodity value of the recycled product we were dropping off. That market has dropped out. We are paying purely a processing fee to get rid of our trash, our recycling. So, when you look at the additional trucking cost, it's really not all that much additional, because you think about it, you're still gonna get that same volume, whether it's trash and recycling, equals the size of a truck. You still might need to put 2 trucks in to get them off commingled. So you probably wouldn't have any cost avoidance in trucking. And your disposal rate, your tipping rate, which is like 70, actually we reduced it from 74, we're down to $68 a ton to dump our trash, and our processing is about $20 a ton for recycling. So the net savings, if you will, is $40 a ton, $48 a ton for recycling. That's our savings due to recycling.
So it would be fair to say that if we encouraged people who are not recycling everything that they could recycle to recycle more, there's some potential savings.
We are number 2 in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts behind the city of, town of Nantucket, who's been recycling by necessity for decades. We
for
are number
compliance,
2.
what does number 2 mean?
We are number 2 recycling rate in Massachusetts.
But that
we are
doesn't, does
stellar.
that tell us, does that tell us what our compliance rate is? Or does it just say that among a bunch of bad communities, we're...
Oh,
we're
no,
good?
no, no, we're number 2 in the entire Commonwealth. Oh, no, what I'm telling you is, a lot of people will implement a pay-as-you-throw program. A lot of people will do single-stream recycling as a way to enhance, make it easier, make it more favorable, to enhance the recycling rates. When we went from our pay-as-you-throw to going to single-stream 2 years ago, we saw a 0 blip. Our people are participating. We are like a 58% recycling community, and, which is astronomical. I mean, I say that with great pride.
It's the same as-
I asked the selectmen 3 years ago now, and they agreed to convene a solid waste advisory committee comprised of a member of the Warrant Committee, the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Health, Planning Board, various staff members. And the charge was then to look at what was the conclusion of the base contract with Waste Management, and we consider our options, and at that time, it made some sense to grant them a 2-year extension. And we analyzed and massaged a lot of the numbers, and we actually had a consultant come in and look at our recycling rates and work with us on that. And we're rock solid that we know we pretty much maxed out what we can get. This time around, at the end of that 2-year extension, so a year ago now, we had reconvened that same committee to look at, we didn't want to extend Waste Management yet again. We felt the market, our consultant we were working with on another project, we felt the market was primed that we could save some money, particularly on the tipping, and we were able to. And then the whole aspect of one of the bidders who lost a piece of his route in Boston suddenly had trucks parked 2 days a week, allowed us to get the savings we did. But through that process, it was, at a committee level with consulting support, to be able to verify our recycling rate as being very, very, very attractive. And we're doing great.
Is there any sense in looking at how much trash is ending up in our recycling, or how much stuff that can't be recycled is in there, to see if we could drive some savings by educating people as to what they really should be putting in the blue bin or not in the blue bin? Does it save us any money to be better recyclers?
We partnered with Sustainable Milton. At our staff level, we lost, 7 years ago, we lost a staff manager who was in charge of exactly those types of initiatives. It was lost through budget cuts just prior to that last Prop 2.5 election. So we used to have exactly that type of person. There was some hope that some of the savings in solid waste was going to be able to reinstate that position. But the powers that be upstairs truly thought, and I don't disagree, that that money is better invested in the stormwater because of the potential for fines by not carrying it out, and knowing that our recycling rate is so strong. So as a result, we still continue to work closely with Sustainable Milton. They have a very, very dedicated membership, and they've rolled out some new initiatives. We instituted textile recycling in the school department. We've talked about food waste, which is coming down the pike. Institutional food waste, as much as it's a pain in the neck, Boston in commercial establishments and institutional establishments are already having to do it. We see it hitting public schools in the next couple of years.
Wow.
So you have food waste. So there's a lot of wet tonnage there that's going to be able to divert out. Is that going to be savings? That will be increased costs.
Separate containers to house it, hauling.
Yeah, that'll be a net increase in costs.
Right.
We looked at it as part of this program, but decided to not do it.
Okay, so one more follow-up question. If we could be better recyclers, would it cost us less money to recycle? Like if people rinse stuff off more, if people put less trash in that blue bin, or is it pretty much we pay them to sort it and whatever gets in there is in there?
There would be a net savings, de minimis in the big picture would be my position on that,
Okay.
without crunching numbers.
All right, thanks.
People are throwing the paper out, or your tonnage is in paper, the rinsing out the containers and things, that's the lightweight stuff that's
I'm wondering if somebody is seeing, you know, in the sorting facility, really dirty recycling and putting it in the trash, and it's costing us money then because it's getting diverted from being able to be recycled. You know, sometimes people say if you don't rinse it out, it can't be recycled, and you're actually costing the town money then in the end. And if you put in things in the blue bin that don't have a recycling symbol on them but are plastic, then it has to get hand sorted out, and then that costs the town money.
Styrofoam.
Yeah.
Misnomer. Styrofoam is recyclable. It's just that there's no market for it, and the processing is so difficult, the volume of it's so big, that nobody's really doing it. But it has a recycle symbol on it, and it can be recycled.
Doesn't the little card we get from the DPW say no styrofoam?
Well, it's
on it?
because our recycling, MRF, Materials Recovery Facility, won't accept the styrofoam.
But it's an example of trash then, and people still put it in the blue bin because they know that it is recyclable, but we're not recycling it. So does
So,
that cost us?
that, if it ends up in the blue bin and it ends up in the recycling truck, it ends up at the MRF. Whether it shows up as residual byproduct, we don't get charged for the residual byproduct. So it still is going to the MRF to begin with. Now, historically, if they find that Milton's load is suddenly having a lot of residual byproduct,
You get a phone call.
you're gonna, well, you might get phone calls initially, but the next time we go out to bid,
Right.
you're gonna see our recycled process number go up higher.
Okay, great.
So right now, we're locked in for a 5-year deal where we're not worrying about that being an issue.
Okay.
I'm more concerned about in 4 years, when we reconvene the Solid Waste Advisory Committee and we go out to rebid, that our vendor who's currently doing it for 2 days a week is no longer doing it 2 days a week. We go back to 5, the playing field is re-leveled, and we suddenly recapture those costs. My narrative speaks to that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, those savings, 5 years, we'll worry about it in 4 years, but those, you know, there's a potential in 5 years, those costs are gonna come back. I retire in 6 years.
There you go. So, quick question, and then Betty. So, just to clarify, when you say that our recycle rate is 58%, that means of all the tonnage that is picked up by trucks from our households, 58% of it is going to recycling?
That's correct, excluding yard waste, not counting yard waste.
Right, okay, and 58% is the second highest percentage?
That's correct.
In the Commonwealth, okay.
Well done.
And it's been that way for years. We've been rock solid in not changing for a good 10 years.
That's great. Betty?
I wanted to ask you about picking up the DPW budget is picking up the cost of utilities for town hall. How long that's been going on, and it doesn't make sense to me because you don't even have a presence in the town hall, you're up in the yard, and why doesn't the selectmen's budget pick this up?
I intended that to be a third rail that people would grab onto, and it's worked. What I think is
You didn't
unfair,
mention that last year.
what I think is unfair, and I don't mind saying it, and it's not intentional, and it's not, you know, there's no scandal or anything. But what's unfair is the reality is the longer it stays with me, like that 35% rate increase that Ted was talking about a couple of months ago, which ultimately boiled down to about a 30% rate increase. Well, if it sits with me, my budget is now absorbing that increase, as opposed to the budget where it belongs. So I've said, you know, it's high time we revisit this issue and get it where it belongs. Take whatever that number is now and take it. And the increases are yours for everyone, not mine. That's the point I wanted to make, and I have gotten some attention. Haven't made any friends, but I've gotten some attention.
And what's the total, I mean, what's the total utility cost for this building typically? Or what has it been like last year or the year before?
I would have to, total utility costs, I have that number, but I don't have it at my fingertips.
Is it over 100,000? Is it, how big is
No,
it?
not 100,000.
No.
All right.
It's not 100,000.
Well, here's an easier question. You have electric utility costs for both DPW and vehicle maintenance budgets.
Correct.
The DPW electric cost is some of the buildings down there and town hall,
That's in town hall, that's correct.
but also some of the buildings down there, and then vehicle maintenance is just 2 of the buildings?
That is correct.
Okay. So can't even break it out quite.
That's why I
like
was
that.
saying, I don't have the number that's available to answer Betty's question precisely, other than to say that, you know, it's the town hall building itself, and then everything else is down at my yard.
Okay.
Part of that's somewhat inaccurate because the park department does occupy one building in my yard, which I pay the electricity on. They don't use a lot of electricity. They're mostly outside.
So, I didn't get the news flash that the increase is now 30%.
Well, I think
As
it's
opposed to
net, and you and I,
35%.
Chad, I think you and I questioned, because we weren't clear ourselves.
Right.
35% rate increase, I think, was the energy cost.
No, the 35%, according to Bill Ritchie, was the estimated impact to the entire electric bill. Sort of the blended impact.
I don't want to speak for him. My understanding from the follow-up conversation with him was the 35% increase that he had referred to was the energy costs, and that the increase for the delivery cost and those other soft costs were less, so that the net was closer to 30%.
Okay, no, I mean, in the notice that he sent out to all the departments,
Back in October?
yeah,
Yeah, that,
he said 35%, and actually the energy supply part went from 7 cents to 11, which is, you know, about a 55% increase. Okay, so the idea was that the total bill was going to be about 35%. So I thought maybe you had new information, like we've received our January bill. No?
no, my information is a follow-up conversation.
All right, so we're
Along the
still,
lines of exactly as Betty asked about me transferring it over to them.
so we're still talking an estimate.
That's
Okay,
correct.
and I'm estimating your budget as being short by about $10,000 on anticipated electric costs.
Having first increased it to begin with, because I had some electric
Yep.
escalators built
Yep.
in.
I've got the DPW line is, your 2014 budget was 36,000, and your actual cost was about like 32. Your 2015 budget was reflective of that, 32,000.
And I'm asking for 40.
And now your budget is 33, but your costs are gonna likely be 43. So you're about 10,000 short. I think the Warrant Committee will probably try and contemplate a townwide fix on electric budgets, because nobody responded to this in time. They probably had all the work done in their budgets, you know, for some of those things. This came the day before the budgets were due to the selectmen. So we do have a problem there also with the vehicle maintenance. You're a little closer, but maybe $1,300, something like that.
Ted, could you revisit the DPW general electricity? Because I have 32 as FY 15. I have my request for 16 at 40,000. So 8,000 increase.
Oh, the level service?
Yeah, level service, level funded, and 2% cut. I carried 40,000 right across.
That's good news.
Are you showing that?
I'm showing 33, I don't know why.
These are the sheets that you emailed to me, and I printed just this afternoon.
I
mind
did
you.
this electricity one a lot earlier. It may have been off your initial, I don't know. Let me check this.
Mine says 40,000.
Mine says 33.
Ted, when I first submitted was 33. I did bump it to 40,000 after you and I last met.
Okay,
So I did take some of that hurt
Great.
off.
okay, all right. So you've taken care of a bunch of that problem, all right. Much better. Great, okay, so that
I
happened.
thought we were getting closer.
That happened between your initial budget and
From
the
the time that
revisions.
you and I met and this evening, we've taken care of that.
Great, thank you.
Some of it.
Most of it, well, most of it, so that's good. So, yeah, no, the stormwater management, if it is gonna be 1.3, I just wanted to revisit what we have in there now is about 6. So then our shortfall is gonna be about 7, as opposed to the 830 that was talked about before?
Right.
Okay, all right, so that's a little bit less. Now, I wanted to ask you about some of the contracts that went to stormwater. See if I got that. Okay.
Talking about those 4 lines?
Yeah, you have payments to contractors from curbside recycling,
Right.
makes sense, and well, 2 of those, for about 198, which you talked about. And then you have the 12,000
Household hazards.
from
right?
household hazardous. And then you had another 47,000, which I presume came out of the DPW general budget?
That's correct. Came
part
out of
their line?
DPW, came out of DPW general, and that would have been for separate contractors to supplement our own in-house forces.
Okay.
For, catch basin cleaning, things that we couldn't use our clam that we would use Vector equipment on, and then some TV work, when you're doing that Vector work. And then, probably even some contract street sweeping. This was, very minuscule amount, but, some of that would have been contract work. So, the 3, recycling, collection, and recycling disposal, those are contracts written, signed 5 years out, 4 years out at this point. And the household hazardous waste is a statewide contract that we simply invoke every year. We haven't signed anything yet, but we know we work within that $12,000 window. So it's an obligation, but it's not a contract. And the other payments to contractor isn't a pure contract on a recurring basis, it's what we carry out in contractual work on a recurring basis. But it's not
An actual contract?
an actual contract.
Okay.
So that, it used to be, I think, payments to contractor line above, which I think you simply moved it down, that's why I had it above. But, because I thought, is that what your intention was, that a true contract was a recurring contract that was, written, signed, and obligated for future years?
Pretty much. But I put this 47,000 down, grouped it down there with it anyway.
So the net didn't change?
Right. And, just because I wanted to see where that was coming from. Also, in order to sort of honor the level expense request, I ended up needing to, we had to take some money out of some other accounts. So one of those, I just took 47,000 out of your DPW general, out of your DPW general line item for payments to contractors, because that's the only way we were gonna get level. Now, you probably already have done that, so you're probably not too happy about this new number in red we've got there. It was the only change. But I had to,
So DPW general on the revised one,
on the revised, Schedule E, in order, are you looking at Schedule E?
I am.
Okay, I don't know. You see the payments to contractors,
So are you saying that when I first submitted my budget and I moved over to stormwater, I didn't reduce it from
I don't know.
the front end?
I couldn't tell. I do know
Thought I
that.
did, but,
I do know that in order to get your budget to level, okay, I had to subtract about 70 grand. And so, because I saw that 47,000 payments to contractors and didn't know where it came from, I figured it came from DPW general, and I had to reduce something somewhere in order to get you level.
It is correct, it would have come from DPW general. That's
Right.
where it would have come from, because the others all came out of solid waste.
Right. But your initial budget had a higher number.
Got it.
Now it has a lower number.
Okay.
Um,
It seems reasonable, I just,
Right. The only other place that I had to adjust your general expenses in order to get level, I took some out of vehicle maintenance. You want to look at that?
yeah, I do want to look at that, because it's probably the last place we want to take it from.
Well, it may be, but it was the only one that went up. So, I mean, the exercise was to submit a level dollar, and you had an extra 150,000 or so to, from the solid waste contract savings to spread around, but you spread around more than that somehow, so, these are, in a perfect world, I left in your level service requests, okay?
I see the changes you made in red and vehicle maintenance adjustments.
Yeah,
The equipment maintenance, the $15,000 hit, depends on a major breakdown.
Right.
I think we can live within that, and if I have a catastrophic failure, I address it at the latter part of the year as a reserve fund transfer if need be. I can live within that.
well, it had to come from somewhere.
Yeah, I understand that.
And we certainly understand your level service request, but to put this budget on the same, playing field as all the others, it had to come from somewhere, and I knew you were a little too busy to be thinking about it, so.
No, I think
Plugged it.
the methodology makes sense, and it's, nothing's catastrophic on that particular vehicle maintenance expense account. We can work with that.
Okay, no, that vehicle maintenance division is akin to paying the electric bill for town hall, because you're repairing everybody's vehicles. And as fleets get older or non-maintained, your costs go up.
That's correct.
So that's an
And I
issue.
probably discussed that in my narrative. If not, I've said it before this committee.
Yeah,
My whole concern with
think you
fleet
may-
creep.
Fleet creep?
Fleet creep.
Yes, the ever-aging fleet.
Everybody's fleet keeps
Yeah.
getting bigger and bigger, and I have to maintain it.
Right.
I did not expound upon it this year, because I felt I was beating a dead horse. Not for this group.
Well, we have new writers every year, so. So I don't know if there are any other particular issues, and probably we ought to let you go and get some sleep if that's a possibility.
I have an overnight hall operation going on, so I have my vest, I just came in from it, to the selectmen's meeting from it.
Oh, Phil,
I have one quick question. Joe, you said you just took receipt of new tracks, and I think you said a windshield for the sidewalk snow blower?
The tracks got delivered, yes, the windshield is en route for
Are
the.
those expensive, and do you have enough money in your budget for them?
The repairs to snow fighting equipment actually get charged to snow and ice costs.
Okay,
So, things that are specialized for that, purpose, get charged.
so that'll be part of the 600,
That's correct.
okay. All right.
Just like fuel, fuel goes in snow fighting, it
How
always gets
expensive
charged.
was it? Stuff you had to get?
About $4,000 in tracks in the windshield, probably $500 or $600, not that much on the windshield.
are you anticipating any savings from gasoline prices coming down?
I built my budget not recognizing that, and we've already seen, actually, I've seen prices go up 12 cents in the past week.
Yeah.
So they're starting to move back up. We buy, I think those folks who are on the committee have heard me say it before, we do buy as part of a bulk purchase. Never in my wildest dream did I think I was gonna be, be a commodity fund hedger. But I'm buying oil futures, diesel fuel futures, and which is what we do. And we work it with, we actually participated within MAPC group purchasing group, and then 3 years ago shifted over to Norfolk County as a group purchasing. And we are literally buying, we're looking at we have a commodity broker who's literally watching the trends in the markets and says, if you're buying bulk, this is the time to do it, and gives us a window to do it. And we just simply forecast, am I buying $70,000 in diesel and 40,000 gallons of gasoline and 4,000 gallons of fuel oil, and pooling that together with the other North Fork County communities and going out and we're buying barrel loads at a time. So, right now, we have purchases that have got us through, midsummer this year, and we've just put out another group purchase that's gonna take me probably to next December, when we actually make the buy. So as the crude number is changing, not so much the way you're seeing at the pump, as that crude number is changing, we're making those purchasing decisions.
Great.
Complicated, I'm not sure it's great. Dollar cost averaging. But,
All right.
so what we're really doing is theoretically, was the money, the fuel that we're buying today, is the money, it's fuel we bought June, July up here. So we're really paying more than we would at the pump right now. But the stuff we're buying in bulk right now, when the prices go back up, we'll be spending it using it at the lower rate.
That's great. So, anybody have anything else? Joe? Darnell, sorry.
Yeah. Joe, when we came over and spoke with you about some of the things going over in the DPW yard there, I know you had mentioned that you were going to talk with the capital committee to finance or see if they can work on financing the other half of that rec room, cafeteria, meeting space. And there was also a gap. I guess we spoke with the cemetery a couple of days ago, and they weren't sure of like the splits and everything. And I was hoping you can give us some information, one on the background of the grievance that the union had, what ended up being a resolution, and where we at, and basically handling our side of that, taking care of our side of that.
Okay. I met with the capital committee either last week or the end of the week before. I very recently met with the capital committee, and they laid out exactly what we had discussed when we met as a group a month and a half ago.
December, yeah.
And maybe 2 months ago, I guess.
Yeah, 2 months ago, yeah.
Seems like, don't even ask me time.
Before
They had that
Christmas.
back.
When we last met.
Right.
And polarized is the result that came out of the Warrant Committee. There's one person in particular who's very, very vocal and very adamant that the vote was for $450,000, period. We're not gonna change it, we're not gonna change the proportion. There has been some discussion that, where the cemetery has hired their architect, done a plan, gone out to bid, and now has a bid resulting in her knowing what her additional funding needs are. When I say additional funding needs is out of that 450, Anne Marie Fagan, the town administrator, Amy Dexter, accountant, myself, took the total requests, initial requests from the cemetery, initial requests from Public Works, total amount, and what they gave us of 450. We simply gave a pro rata share that boiled down in round numbers that $150,000 would go to the cemetery for their project, and $300,000 would go to the Public Works Department for its project. There was some debate at the capital committee whether that was legal, whether that was the vote of town meeting, and whether that, when they borrow the money through the bond, whether that's how it was stated to the bonding agencies, and therefore, did you borrow the money out of false pretenses? That was where the discussion went. I'm confident the answers to all of those is no, no, and no. I think we did everything just fine, and that, they, as a group, said, here's 450, deal with it, and that's what we did, is deal with it. So, with the cemetery department having about 150 of the total, her bids have come in higher and needs, she knows what she needs. So the discussions a few weeks ago was, we're still in the planning phase. The DPW study committees just awarded the architectural services for its overall facility. We would use that architect to give me a design biddable document to get out in the street for the actual construction. So we're still dealing with a planning number of 450, where the cemetery department has a known number. So the discussions were, well, why wouldn't you consider giving the cemetery what they need, period? And when you open your bids, since you're gonna need more money anyway, why don't you just ask for the full amount that you need? And the Warrant Committee, the Capital Planning Committee tabled the matter for future discussion, and there was no discussion. But there was a very heated debate over whether it made sense to continue to even use that split, and whether it was right or not. So, I don't know where it's gonna go. Now, as far as our project's concerned, the DPW Study Committee's finally awarded, they get waylaid by quorum issues and weather issues, and finally, a couple weeks ago, allowed us to issue it to Weston and Sampson. They're the consultant who's gonna get the project. They are also gonna get the design. The grievance remains in place. My men are anxious, my men and women are anxious to see it resolved. They're happy to see momentum. They're discouraged to hear that there's this funding issues being debated at the capital committee. So we're still moving in the right direction, and we're still, hoping to get it done. But in the end, I believe my estimate's pretty close. 450 is what we need, and the cemetery's bids are they need more. So, if the total was 450, it sounds like that. I think her number was 220 something. I think the shortfall is about 220.
I thought she told us it was 190 for the total.
191.
That's all.
Yeah.
Was that including electrical? There was something that was again, that she kept as an option, which really wasn't an option.
Oh, that would not, I just know she said 191.
That's, yeah.
All right, so that's the shortfall.
what I heard.
It sounds to be, if she's satisfied with that, then that's what the shortfall would be. Rather than 450, it seems like it should have been, 6 something.
So she only needs $41,000 to complete her project, if we honor that original split?
If we honor the split that was derived from the administration. There was a challenge raised, whether the vote of town meeting, I don't think it was, we have to review the tape, but I don't believe that the town meeting ever got into this splitting of the funds. It was to authorize to borrow and appropriate $450,000 for the purpose of completing improvements to public works and cemetery buildings. I think it was as vague as that.
Do you have the warrant
Thir-
from 2 years ago?
13, right?
Oh, was it 13? No. it would've
Calendar
been-
year 13 for FY 14, right? No, calendar year 12 for FY
12.
13.
13.
It's gotta say 2012 on it.
I think it might be cut off.
Because I can't imagine that
I don't think they
town
just
meeting
split, because-
did anything but vote on the list of capital
was-
projects. And
I'm not saying the person is right, I'm just saying he's raised the issue to the point that they had to table it and do this research.
And wasn't there opportunity or whatever that this is supposed to be done as a joint project or whatever at some point? Was that my understanding? It was gonna be, a joint project over at the DPW yard?
Well,
for
there was
cemetery
some thought that they would move the cemetery operations to our yard.
actually,
Which one?
2013, it's not.
Hey, I'm no Julia, but I'm doing the best I can.
Good job over there. Very impressive.
Kevin, this is, okay. It just says recommended the town appropriate the sum of 2 million, whatever, to fund the capital projects listed below. DPW/cemetery, reconstruct DPW locker rooms/cemetery garage, 450,000.
Perfectly vanilla, and how it is you allocate it, I think makes perfect sense,
Right.
which is how we proceeded.
Right.
So,
Right.
to Donnell's question we rolled it out to the capital planning committee, and just the debate ensued, and they have not reached a decision on it yet.
Okay, and, Is there a chance that our procrastination will cost the town more money if the union decides to go back and press their grievance?
The answer is always yes. The union is realistic. They also know that we're working hard in trying to achieve their goal. I think at some point, if there's impasse or if there's backtracking, they might get a little antsy. But right now, I think they're satisfied with the process that we're following, and they understand that we're genuine in pursuing the project. So the next step with the monies that we do have is, now that we have Weston and Sampson aboard, let's get that design done. Let's get it out to bid. Let's deal with a real number. And if it's less than 450, if in fact there's some savings, maybe the problem goes away. I don't think so, but that's the next step.
So on a slightly related question, because the solid waste contracts in effect for this fiscal year are less than what was budgeted by that same 150 that you're setting up the stormwater with, is there any is that going to supplement your snow and ice, or do you have another idea for that?
I thought you were gonna ask me, could I spend that money on this project? I did ask that question. Would there be some money and could be used on this project? And the answer is no, where it is a capital project.
That's what I figured.
It's a lightning rod, and there's no way I'd not get electrocuted by doing that.
It's too bad.
It's real money. It's real savings, and it's, monies that was budgeted in this year. It was budgeted for a purpose called solid waste. In the town accountant's eyes, she's very good at what she does, is that it was appropriated for solid waste. It's going to be free cash in solid waste. I can't use it.
3% transfer
What?
ability? You
Well,
can't.
3%, yeah, within the limits of the statute, you could transfer some of it, but we're talking substantial money as opposed to all of it. But yeah, some of it could be used, that 3% transfer towards the end of the year to offset some of the snow cost. But not all of it. It's
Well,
gonna
all-
show up, it's gonna
all
show up
in
as
your
free
budget.
cash.
It's all in your budget already.
That's correct. It's gonna be unspent. It's gonna be unspent at the end of the fiscal year. It's gonna show up as certified free cash in October and or in September, and
Well, no,
town meeting's
no,
gonna-
I mean,
What can go in
it's available for snow and ice if it's not being spent.
Yeah.
Except I hear what you're saying, and we are bottom line, but she says the way, not she, I don't want to say it that way, the way our budget is laid out in the warrant, the way the lines are identified, even though they're voting the bottom line, the information given to town meeting is that each of those lines are in fact
Separate budgets?
packaged within solid waste, packaged within DPW general, and packaged within vehicle maintenance.
So I know that management is looking for ways to deal with the snow and ice budget. Last year, we transferred, with the 3% rule, $300,000 out of group insurance for the snow and ice budget. I can't imagine that this is any more difficult, and that was a separate budget.
Seems like it would be easier.
Right. I mean, my feeling is that there's $150,000. If it can't be used for fast-tracking your capital project, it certainly could be used for snow and ice, and not let it go through the free cash
So I
cycle.
did not have that conversation with her in snow and ice. I did not. My conversation
Okay.
was specific to using it for capital. And I think the concern was bigger to the point that capital has to come through the capital committee, and simply using budget money to make a capital expenditure is something that would be frowned upon.
Could be part of their recommendation. How does the warrant committee fund it? With a prior year appropriation? No? Couldn't the capital committee make it part of their recommendation to the selectmen or the warrant committee that this project be funded with a prior year appropriation from the solid waste contract line?
For 150?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not an accountant.
Oh, I'm going to
But
pull
it's
it out of the
available,
budget.
it's available money that in my opinion, should never go to free cash.
Yeah, because
You know, it should go to snow and ice and save us some 150 of that headache, or it should pay for a building that's sorely needed, or finish paying for it. Darnell?
I said, why don't we just have selectmen go in and take them out as part of adjusting the budget for, like we spoke about earlier, going around to all the different departments, find whatever money's there, and they can just pull the money out of those budgets and put it towards whatever the emergency is. I mean, they can go around and look for money, and I think it should bypass that 3%.
Aside from a 3% rule,
Well, that's internal department spending. I'm talking about, going around looking for additional money across, but what's not being spent. So we need to cut budgets to meet a need. It can assess a cut in a budget.
well, if a budget is, if restraint in spending is shown in a budget, then it does go to free cash. And then the free cash would be available to pay the bills for snow.
No,
and ice
no, that's, but that's at the end of
A
the
year
year.
later.
But I'm talking about inside the year.
Right, in
Know what I'm saying?
October, not
If-
good.
You're saying revise.
I'm saying revising the budget number inside that year, inside that fiscal year. And that has been done before, where we have gone in and
I
pulled
think
money
that-
out of budgets.
I think that does need a vote at town meeting.
It's the inside of the year. It does not at the town meeting. So we get a cut on local aid in the middle of a fiscal year. All of a sudden, we need to pay bills. A lot of departments are getting asked to squeeze in the middle of the year. I mean, that's part of it.
I think from an accounting perspective, without an appropriation or a vote of town meeting, Donnell, I think what that happens is simply people underspend their budgets, so as the fiscal year closes out, all that underspending equals free cash, which hopefully was the goal to meet those reductions in